discipline. And these are all based on my new book, Habits for a Sacred Home. This book is about 9 practices from history that can anchor and restore modern families. And we'd love to help you do this with intentional questions, featuring amazing women of faith, and even an extra book list at the end so you can continue your learning about these habits of life that can bring more peace and connection to your family. So grab your copy at habitsforasacredhome.com. We'll link this in the show notes so you can get started on building a rule of life for your family today. This is Jennifer Pepito with the Restoration Home podcast. This is the show where we talk about the peaceful path to connected families and restored communities. Today on the show, I'm so excited to be talking to one of my homeschool heroes, Cindy Rollins. She is the author of Mere Motherhood, one of my favorite books on homeschooling and just the mom life. And she also recently came out with Beyond Mere Motherhood, Moms Are People Too, which is such a comforting book for me in this late stage of homeschooling where I don't have little kids who I get to do arts and crafts with and all the wonderful memories that we made homeschooling. Thank you so much for your faithfulness on this journey, Cindy.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. I feel like I need to be honest with people, and I feel like that's what helps them the most anyway. So that's where I find myself these days.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like when people set themselves up as infallible and then give advice from this place of, I know everything, so often later on you find out that they actually had a lot of duplicity. They weren't necessarily living lives of integrity, or, one of the, the parenting teachers who destroyed so many of our babies, it turns out only half of his children talk to him. 50% of his children don't talk to him. So it's like, I feel like there were so many parenting leaders who set themselves up in that way before they really had that much life experience with their own children. And I appreciate how honest you've been, that you don't say, I know exactly the way, but you also still have so much authority, and you also still talk so much about being steadfast. And one of the things you've been talking a lot about lately in your newsletter and on your own podcast is this poem by Christina Rossetti, Uphill. And I just thought it'd be really sweet if we started out by having you read that poem.
Okay, this is one of my favorite poems. It's by Christina Rossetti, Uphill. Does the road wind uphill all the way? Yes, to the very end. Will the day's journey take the whole long day? From morn to night, my friend. But is there for the night a resting place? A roof for when the slow dark hours begin? May not the darkness hide it from my face? You cannot miss that inn. Shall I meet other wayfarers at night, those who have gone before? Then must I knock or call when just in sight? They will not keep you waiting at that door. Shall I find comfort, travel sore and weak? Of labor you shall find the sum. Will there be beds for me and all who seek? Yea, beds for all who come.
Oh, I love this poem so much. And I've said some lines of it to several of my family members recently, because there is a sense that life feels a little bit uphill. And I think, for maybe even more of us, the economy hasn't been amazing. And for those of us feeding a big family, groceries are double what they were a few years ago. And so there's a sense of sometimes even, weariness, even desperation. And on this show, we're talking so much about the rule of St. Benedict and about how we can, follow some of these spiritual disciplines in a sense and create more hopeful homes, and homes that can actually be transformative in society. But there's one of the rules that is so important I wanted to talk to you about today, and that's the rule of stability. And stability does mean just keeping going even when we don't see the results. And that's one of the things that I love about your messaging, is that we have been called to something really powerful in nurturing our homes. And yet we cannot control the outcome. And so how do we just keep staying faithful and steady even when the results at a moment or in a season are discouraging?
Yeah, and I love the way this poem starts. It goes through my head all the time. Does the road wind uphill all the way? Yes, it winds uphill to the very end. And while on the one hand, that is a discouraging message, on the other hand, it should encourage us. Often when the road is uphill, we begin to think something's wrong and we have to fix it. And we go looking for love in all the wrong places, so to speak. We try this and we try that, and we're very vulnerable to voices, people offering us products and everything that comes with trying to fix something that maybe is just part of how we live our life. It's not to say we shouldn't look for solutions for problems here and there, but really understanding that life is challenging most of the time and that we do get respite along the way, but it is not a strange thing that we're having difficulties and things are hard. And you're right. I love Esther DeWall, and she has a book called Seeking God. It's about the rule of Saint Benedict. And one of the biggest messages she has in there is the importance of stability. And when we understand the road is uphill, we have a little bit more stability than if we're just like constantly like, what is going on? This is terrible. I've got to fix it. I'm flying here. I'm flying there. I'm trying to get this fixed, instead of the steady faithfulness of just plodding on, going on, even when things are rough, and not giving up.
Yes, I love that so much, because I think often when we hit a rough patch, and I know that our family experienced this, there's a sense of, oh, I've got to do something different. Like my kid cries over the math lessons. I got to do a different curriculum. My kid has multiple days of crying. Oh, I got to put them in public school. Our marriage is struggling. Oh, we got to get divorced. You know what I mean? And so I think there's this sense often that if something is not going well, that we have to stop doing that thing. And I think more often, I do believe that there is hope, that we can get counseling, that there are ways to navigate life with more peace and purpose. And we talk a lot about that here. But also there's a sense of, the faithful shall eat the good of the land. And so sometimes it just means continuing to do the right thing, even if you aren't seeing immediate results with it.
Right. And sometimes we just need the hope of knowing that, yes, it doesn't look good in this moment, but what I'm doing is a good thing. And I do think we have an enemy who wants to knock us down and make us despair and make us feel hopeless and cause us to trade in, to look for something easier. And rather than the life of faithfulness that comes, like you said, in a marriage, the power of a marriage that perseveres through really hard times and not always fun times, and yet the fruit that you can have when you look back and you say, that was a really hard road, but we stuck it out. We stayed together, and that has brought a lot of stability to our children and our grandchildren. So
yeah. I so appreciate that example that you've set, because I think everybody has problems, and sometimes people can almost make life look so romantic, especially certain leaders, that it makes it hard for women who are struggling with, somebody who deals with emotional up and downs, or, somebody who in a season maybe isn't providing the way they want them to, or there's just a myriad of things that we go through in our marriages and our family life that can make us feel like, oh, something's wrong, and so I need to quit this. How have you stayed steady, especially in marriage you've probably been married 40 years, I'm guessing.
Yeah, we'll be married 44 years in July of this year. And there have been times when my husband and I, he's a Christian, so that helps. We just look at each other and we say, we're in an argument, we're disagreeing, we're really mad at each other. And we realize that, our communication is failing, and we're not able to fix it. But we, as Christians, we can go to the Lord in prayer. And that's usually what my husband and I end up doing when we want to kill each other, is saying, you know what, let's just stop talking. Let's pray and let go of this for a while and see what God does. And I can say that through every time that has happened, and sometimes when you just think, well, we just can't even be married anymore, we're so mad at each other, God has worked, and he has brought peace to our relationship. Not even because we communicated well. Honestly, I tend to think sometimes, except for our communication with God, that's never overrated. But sometimes our trying to communicate with one another is really just making the problem worse. Maybe settling, digging it in instead of letting it kind of root itself up. But yeah, and God has been very, very faithful to always answer that prayer so far. And, I thought about this the other day. I watched this really beautiful video of a woman who was with a husband who was handicapped. He had had an accident or a stroke or something. And I thought sometimes in a marriage, we are emotionally handicapped, but we don't leave because our partner is emotionally handicapped, or we are in a stage of emotional weakness. That is not the time to leave our marriage. That is the time to bear one another's burdens and bear with one another. And it's not easy. It's not easy at all, but it does have rewards. There is rewards for stability.
Yeah, I love that so much. And it's interesting, over the course of my parenting, we have made mistakes and we have actually turned corners. We were too authoritarian with some of the older children. And so then we made an adjustment and were more developmentally appropriate and more responsive to some of the other children. And we, in dealing with some of the older children, we didn't connect enough with some of the middle children. And so there's been all these, little adjustments that we've made along the way, and pain, like as a family dealing with, we have 7 children over a wide age range, 30 years old to 15 years old. And so over the years, some children got a little bit undernourished because we were trying to deal with the problems of another child. Sometimes our marriage got a little undernourished. But one of the things that's given me so much hope is to see how much repair is available even into the adult years. Right now we live in the same town as 2 of our boys who probably got the least amount of parenting because of our lifestyle and the missions we were doing, and my husband and I's conflict that we were in. They, in some ways, got shafted in parenting in their early years. And yet here we are living in the same town. They come over multiple times a week for dinner. We're able to be so much more present in their lives right now than maybe we even were when they were children. And we're repairing those relationships and seeing so much growth and connection because of it. And so I think that's one thing I would really want to say to moms is it's never too late to repair. Like if you feel like, oh yes, I did make mistakes and I, threw them all back in public school and then it caused a whole bunch of other problems, or whatever the reaction that you did was, or my husband and I went through struggles and it caused all these problems. It's never too late to repair. Have you seen that in your family as well, Cindy?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Sometimes when I see the work of the Lord in our family, I'm just so amazed that, yes, he does answer prayer, and he does justify our mistakes in a way. He trues up the lines so that even though, yes, we did make all these terrible mistakes, and, kids go through a period of time usually where they need to disassociate from their family, and they see all those mistakes, and those mistakes loom large. And of course, for mom, it's devastating. It's devastating to hear, oh, I made this terrible mistake with my child. I didn't give that child enough attention. They were, that was not good. I didn't know they were going through this terrible thing. And you feel this heavy guilt about it. But God does do so much restoring. I even told my husband last night, I said, man, our kids have just been so nice to me lately. They're all getting older, and we're moving away from some of the years where it was so painful. And with 9, or 7, or if you have a lot, then if one starts complaining, then other people will go, yeah, now that you mention it, they are kind of like that. So it can be kind of a snowball effect. But then as God brings healing and things start to, I've seen so much with, I have such a beautiful relationship with my younger two boys that are local, and they come over and, do their laundry. They're in college. They're about to graduate, both of them. And I know that's just a gift from the Lord, and I'm so thankful for it.
Yeah, it's hopeful. And I think that moms listening should really take heart knowing that even if you did feel like you guys went through a rough patch or there was disconnection, that it's always possible to repair. And one of the things that we've done with our older children is when things came up that they remembered from childhood that they were hurt by, I will preemptively offer empathy and just say, I wish I could have been more present with you there.
Yes.
This is some of the stuff that was going on, but you are such a beautiful person. You deserved my attention and affection. Because one of the things I'm reading right now through research by Daniel Siegel and others is that what matters more than perfect family life is just that when your children went through a hard thing, somebody was there to comfort them. And it's going to be missed at some point. And I think, the really interesting thing is that in family life, there's going to be mistakes made one way or the other. I feel like we were too authoritarian with my older children and too focused on behavior. And unfortunately, that is some of the bulk of Christian parenting advice is all about behavior. And that was a hardship for our family because we didn't then focus enough on connection. But I think for some of the kids that are growing up now in families where there's less of a focus on behavior and a lot on connection, later on they might say, "Oh, Mom, I wish you would have taught me how to do things right. And I wish you would have made me do my homework." Or, what I mean? There's going to be errors either way. We're not going to get it right because we're not Jesus. And so I think to some degree, accepting that you cannot be a perfect parent is going to help you be a better parent and a more present parent. And then the other thing that we've done as a family to work through some of this is just giving ourselves a little bit of comfort for our own childhood, because so many of the parenting mistakes that we made were related to, I didn't feel like my parents were present with me. And so I was always sort of controlling because I wanted to make sure people around to love me. And then actually offering myself some comfort or sitting with a therapist or talking to Jesus about it so that some of the broken places in us don't continue to perpetuate brokenness in our families.
Right. My husband and I both had this really neat thing that happened. So I was reading the Bible one day and I read the parable of the sower who went out to sow the seed, and he sowed good seed in the field, but then an enemy came and sowed bad seed in the soil. Now, what that told me was the seed I had sown while I was homeschooling my children was good seed. The fact that there were some weeds and tares coming up also was not a sign that I had not sown good seed. And not to say that I didn't make vast mistakes, I did. But that the seed itself, the homeschooling, the love that I was trying to give my children, even inadequately, was good seed. Well, my husband, I'm telling him this, and he goes, "Well, that is so weird." He said, "I was just reading that passage," and he said, the rest of that passage is that he said, "Should we pull up the weeds? The weeds that we see in our kids that we wish had not grown there." And the Lord said to the guy, he said, "No, wait till the end of the age. Let God pull those weeds up, because if you pull them up, then you're going to pull up the good seed also, the good fruit." So that was helpful to my husband, who, when he sees our adult children in our home who are doing some things that, concern him, or that he has to pray and wait and not just go in and with both hands try to rip the weeds out of their lives, that maybe we helped be there. So that was one passage that has been really comforting to both of my husband and I as we navigate dealing with our adult children.
Yeah, that's so good, Cindy, because it's like you have to have nerves of steel to parent teens and adults. Because I think, for us, there was a lot of teaching on uber control in the lives of your teens and children. And I still believe in curating a godly atmosphere and still being parents. Like we just because every other teen has an iPhone with all kinds of garbage on it doesn't mean our teens have to have an iPhone with all the garbage on it. So I think we still have to curate, but there is going to be a time where we have no control. Our children are adults. They're out of our home, and we have to just trust that all those seeds that we sowed will bear fruit. And so we continue sowing the seeds. And one of the things I love about your book, Beyond Mere Motherhood, is it has all these real amazing books that part of what these books do is give us truth. Because, when you read about, for instance, Madeleine L'Engle, I mean, she faithfully loved the Lord, but she also made mistakes, had questions,
Yes.
had children who struggled, but sometimes I think there have been books, even like the book, What is a Family by Elizabeth Elliot. I read that book almost as a parenting Bible, often felt very sad and inadequate because we weren't as good as them. But then reading her newest biography, Being Elizabeth Elliot, you find that she actually had some decent complaints about her mother's overbearing, super religious, critical spirit. And so I think when you can read true books that are honest, but also hopeful, then we can get a perspective on life that helps us continue to be hopeful and keep sowing the seeds, but not hate ourselves when things are imperfect.
Right. I think when we spread a feast and we let that feast do its work, when we read God's word, but maybe we don't like pound every lesson home, but let it do the work in the lives of our children, we're in a little bit safer territory than when we think we're in control of this ship and we're going to steer it, based on maybe trying to overcorrect from our own past. When my kids say, "Oh, I didn't feel like you saw me," or that I got a lot of attention, certain ones of them have said that. And I think to myself, well, good grief, my mom, I wasn't getting any, I gave you way more attention than my mom ever gave me. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's confusing for maybe our generation to feel like, this was what parenting looked like in this generation. Now it's changed a little bit. There's more required out of modern parents. And it's a tough time to be a parent. There's a lot going on, like you said, about the social media, the devices. We're learning a lot about depression in young people. And it is on the parent to take this information and do something with it, because it's vital to the health of the family that parents do parent, and we're not just emotional. We're not just there to prop up our children emotionally. We're also there to help them develop good habits, as Charlotte Mason would say.
Yeah. Yeah. This has been so much fun, Cindy. If we could conclude one thing, it's like, keep going with the spiritual disciplines. Keep reading the Bible to yourself and your children. Keep curating a godly home, but also don't get anxious and afraid when there are bumps in the road, recognizing that yes, the road winds uphill, but we will find comfort and there will be comfort for us, and we will earn the reward of God saying, well done, good and faithful servant.
Amen.